Do you think that in this detail here, I tried to ask Tate to put together a whole bunch of options and ideas. You can see that this is the penetration, a fairly large one at that, with the boot going through. The draining house wrap that you have here. This shows an example of putting foam on the exterior. We talked about the session earlier about getting this thermal integrity of the overall enclosure. How do I interrupt the conductive flow through all the framing? And will we see ourselves probably looking at foam on the exterior buildings? So if I put foam on the outside of the buildings, I've got to make sure that I've decided that this is my primary draining space. So if this becomes my primary draining space for liquid water, how well should it be done? And how do I integrate that? And when do I put my windows and all the flashing and penetrations? I always believe that before you put foam or anything else on, you then walk back and you go, okay, before I clad this building, I got to pretend I've got a garden hose and I'm going to spray the house wrap. And I'm going to watch, pretend you can do this, but you can watch it go. Everything's coming here, drains off there, kicks off there, and it goes right in the living room. When should you fix that? Right now. So once you get those details, all of a sudden your eyes are going to pick it up and you're like, that's flashed wrong. And you'll get that stuff after the third, fourth, fifth time. You'll absolutely nail this. So those are details that are important. This is as if this is my primary draining layer. If the foam got put on first, onto the sheathing, and then I put my house wrap over the foam, does that make it a little more complicated? Kind of does. You're trying to figure out where my layering fits. So you go, so if I'm going to put the window in, am I going to somehow put the window over the foam? Now if you put this window fin over the foam, is there a concern with the fastener going through the fin and then attaching back here at the sheathing? And will it matter the type of fastening and the length of the fastener? Could there be any sag in a large window? See, all those things have to be taken into account. Could you also, like I said earlier, buck this window out? Make a 2x6, use a 2x8 buck. Build the 2x8 buck, run your foam up to it, put the house wrap on, secure it to the fin as you normally would. It's got a solid surface to nail to. Then you install everything else after that. Here you'll also see a product, it's a rain screen. How many of you guys are familiar with a product that's similar to this anyway? Of fluted batten. This was invented by a couple of fellows in Sacramento, California. They found out that an enormous number of failures were occurring with roof tiles. And the tile roofs in California were failing all over the place because they would take traditional pine, like number 7 pine, I swear, the worst stuff they could find, and they would put that on the roof on top of the felt. They would kind of break it and interrupt it, assuming that the water knew to follow this arduous path. So in order for it to flow, it had to flow against the wood battens, build up a little bit ahead on the side before it could flow, right? So they found out that all the roof battens were rotting in its connection to the roof deck. So I have a 75-year tile stuck on a 10-year assembly. Isn't that? So they look for a product like this. They got it rated for roof tiles. They'd put this down like this, put the roof tile on top. It allowed ventilation and drainage to occur. So that worked remarkably well for roof tiles. Then they decided that that made a lot of sense to put that on the wall. And now if I place my cement siding over that vented airspace, does that provide me with accelerated drying? As I mentioned at the meeting we had before, 2 sheets of plywood on a job site, it rains on Thursday, you pull them up on Friday and there's still water between, even if it hasn't rained for a day. Throw a piece of wood between them and it dries by the end of the day. Airflow is a tremendously powerful opportunity to accelerate the rate of drying. So vented rain screens in your marketplace probably has a very important place in the future of where you guys are going to go. As I improve the thermal performance of the wall, reducing the amount of energy flow through the assembly, that lowered the rate of drying, which means I got to find other mechanisms to assist drying in a wet climate.